We are on Nunei 55. We said that the shear of a earthenware vessel that's broken, as long as it's shiurin b'chdei sichas cotton, as long as it can still hold the amount of shemen to anoint the finger of a 1-day-old infant, so it's a very small amount. And ad log, up into a log, and my love log kilmata. We're dealing with this ad va'ad bichlal. So is up until a log like below? So log kilamala, not like which is like Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman said that it's not including when you go up. So Toshma, the same kind of vessel, milogad saw brevius, from a log to a saw, as long as it can hold a revius of a log, it's still it's still a kli, and it's makabel tumah. And what about up until a saw? The saw will be kilamata, will be like a quarter log, that it will still be okay. Thus, so lo saw kilmala. The saw goes to the next level of tumah. Toshma misavat sasayim b'chatzi log. A kli from saw until two saw, as long as it holds a chatzi log. Now, my lav sasayim kilmata, is the two saw like the chatzi log or above? Lo sasayim kilamal. The two sasayim goes to the next level. But v'hatanya lo kilamata, so kilamata, sasayim kilamata, not kilamala, which is against Rav Nachman. So the Gemara says hasam l'chumra. When you say ad v'ad bichlal, you include it if it's going to lead to a chumra. And you would say up to and not including if that also leads to a chumra. Dam Rav Yochanan. Kol shirei chachamim lahachmir. When chachamim give you a shear, it's got to be measured exactly. Always to l'chumra. Chutz mikgrishol ksamim lahakel. When they said by a kesem that if a woman finds a stain the size of a bean, up to that, we can say it's not need of blood, but rather it's from an insect bite. And therefore it's a kul there. And dekanami, diktani. Allah dahi, we talked about, we had these rope beds, and if you had rope beyond 5 tefach, it's not part of the bed. Chamisha kilamala, but asara kilamata. So, because each interpretation will lead to a chumrah. Nitalat chol. In the Mishnah of Eluk Sherus, it said if the spleen was removed, the animal remains kosher. Of course, human beings can live without a spleen. We take out the spleen many times. And in fact, the Gemara points out that the heter is if it was removed completely. Aval nikiv treifa. But let's say it's a hole in it. So then it's treif. I've said multiple times in my career when I was a general surgeon training to be a urologist, when we would be called for for abdominal trauma, and and you do an exploratory laparotomy, you'd open up the belly. In my day, if the spleen was injured, you remove the whole spleen. You didn't try to fix it because it would never work. In the last 20, 30 years, they can patch up spleens. They have hemostatic agents and they have special ways of doing it. But in the 70s and 80s, if somebody had a splenic injury, they removed the spleen. Because it's much more dangerous to leave a spleen in leaking and bleeding than taking it out. And the halacha expressed by the Gemara sort of fits that. Maser Rav Yossi bar Ravi. Rabbi Yossi asked, V'item Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida asked, Choitech me'uber shebeme'eha. There is a fetus in a womb, and you cut off a piece of the fetus, and you leave it in the womb, and then you shech the mother, mutter bachila. That piece that was detached, just like you can eat the fetus, you can eat the detached piece. However, if you detach a piece minat chol or minat kloyos, or from the kidney, and you leave it inside, separate from the organ itself, and then you shecht the animal, osir bachil. But habehema gufa sharya, the animal itself is kosher, you just can't eat the piece. Now, isn't cutting off a piece of spleen like having a hole in the spleen? So the Gemara says, "Who hadn't the filu beimenamias here?" There's no reason to suggest that the behema is not treif. The behema in this case is treif because the spleen has a defect in it. It's only either the tanaration mutter bachila. Since the first case about the fetus, we say mutter bachila tarnami seifa osir bachila, but not only it, the whole animal. So that's one way to explain. V'boy seima, the Gemara gives another answer to say that the whole animal is permitted, but nikov l'chud v'nechtach l'chud. Having a hole and having something cut are two different things. Having a hole makes it a treifa, but having just a cut does not make it treif. Now comes a very controversial part. Nitlu kloyos, right? If the two kidneys were removed, the Mishnah said kshera. Now, I have no explanation for that. I explained to you yesterday that the art scroll brings some rabbi who investigated in Switzerland. They had done some studies of sheep and goats and other ruminants, and they took their kidneys out, left them alive for a week, and somehow the digestive tract took over some of the function of the kidney. I never heard of such a thing. Number two, they shechted after a week. If you let the animal stay alive, it wouldn't. There is no mammal that can survive without its kidneys. So, as I explained, there are people who amend the Mishnah and says nitil akulya, the kidney, to remove one kidney. Come in, Ayla. Ayla. Okay. Now here's something else. Laksa b'kuya achas treifa. If one of the kidneys had pus in it, it's treif. It's full of pus. And it reaches lamokam chritz. The kidney has parenchyma, which the glomeruli, which filters the urine, and then the middle part of the kidney is where the collecting ducts are, which forms the drainage system, the ureter that goes down to the bladder. So this infection has to go all the way from the renal parenchyma into the middle part. It looks white, and that's Amrav Nechunya. I asked all the treifa experts in Eretz Yisrael for Amrli Hilchas Karachish Bar Papa. The halacha is like rakish that even the disease in one kidney makes it a treifa, and less hilchos like Rav Avira, which was he said that a spleen that had a hole is treif, but we don't paskin that way. And that which we said lo amon el bekulshe, that's if the spleen was punctured in a very thin piece of it. But in the thick part of the spleen, if it has a hole, it would be treif. If there's enough spleen left, a golden dinner size, the animal would be kosher. Amri b'marava. Kol hapoisel b'reya kosher b'kulya. Any defect in the lung, that same defect is going to be okay in the kidney. Shori nekev posel b'reya. A hole in the lung is posel, but kosher b'kulya. A hole in the kidney is okay. The kosher kenechad the kosher b'reya kosher b'kulya. Any abnormality in the lung that makes it kosher would certainly be kosher in the kidney. Maskir Rav Tanchuma. Klalu, is that correct? Very mugla the kosher b'reya. If there's pus in the lung, that doesn't necessarily make it treif, but uposel b'kulya. We just learned that it does invalidate the kidney. We also have, like, if the lung has clear fluid, and let's say the kidney has a cyst with clear fluid, they're both kosher. So it's not opposite between lung and kidney. Treifus kumadamis ladodi. You're trying to compare different treifus. You can't compare treifus to treifus. You cut from here, the animal dies. You cut from here, and it lives. So you can't compare the two. That which we said, when you find clear fluid in the kidney and it's kosher, that's got to be clear. If it's cloudy, it would be treif. V'chitzili nami, even when it's clear, lo amarna lo sriach, but doesn't stink. Val sriach treifa. Then hakul yishiktina, you have an atrophic kidney, and you can be born with that, or it can happen later on. How big? Bidaka ad kipul, a small animal, even if it's shrunk to the size of a bean. Begasa ad kanova beininis, a large animal even to a small grape. Medium grape. Nitza lechi atachto. If the lower jaw was removed, if you can feed the animal by, you actually feed it, then it's not treif. If the animal will not be able to be fed by pushing food into it, then it's treif. Nitla ha'em shala, if the uterus is removed, tana, hi ha'em hi tarpachas hi shalpuchis. These are all the same name. V'charusa b'dei shamayim kshera. If the lung shriveled because the animal heard thunder or lightning and it got afraid, it's kosher. Ton Rabbanan, ezer charusa kol shetzam kareya shala. The lung became shriveled. B'dei shamayim kshera. If the frightening event was like thunder or lightning, then it's kosher. But if, let's say, another human being scared it, bidei adam treifa. It's not just another human being, but like a lion. Iboilu. Rab Shimon Lazar Reisha Koi Ulakula. Is Rab Shimon going to be lenient that if the lung shrivels by other creatures, it's kosher, like bidei shamayim, or sefer koi lechumra, or it's going to be like just like human being made it treif, the other creatures make it treif. Toshma, the tanicharusa bidei adam treif, and Reb Shimon also omer af bidei kol habriyos. So it's clear, both the human and the animal. Rabbi Rachana have a kozl b'midbara. Rabbi Rachana was traveling in the desert. They found a ram that the lung was shriveled. Also shol b'midrasha. They went and asked in the yeshiva. Amrulei, Bekaita aiti miskili chivri. In the summertime, after shechita, take white kalim, umalinu mayakri, fill it up with cold water. Vanichu meisleis, leave the lungs for 24 hours. Yihadrin baryan, if it comes back to their normal size, b'dei shamayim u'ksheva. The shrinkage was b'dei shamayim and the animal is kosher. If it does not come back, ilo treifa. Besitna in the wintertime, Isi Meshiv Shichum, they bring black kalim, Umalinu Mai Pshuri, put lukewarm water, Van Chisume slays, leave it for 24 hours. Yad Rabar Yakshera, if it comes back to its size, it's kosher. Hilo Treifa. Hagluda, if the animal had its skin removed, so there's machlokas. Rav Meir said it's kosher, Chacham said it's treif. Don Rabban. Hagluda, Rav Meir Machshav, Chacham Poisel. Ukvarheid Elazar Safra of Yochel Megud Goda Alagluda Shapsula. They said it's possible. On Rishon Elazar Chazab Rab Meir, and even Rab Meir agreed to the Chacham. Michlad Rab Shimon Elazar Polig Rab Meir Begluda, implying that Rab Shimon still held that Rab Meir held it was not possible. I Vatanya Rab Shimon Elazar Loinech Rab Meir Chacham Alagluda Shapsula. They all agree that it's possible. So it was testified. Alagluda shapsula. However, if there's enough skin, the size of a sella would be kosher. But here it seems against what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, that Rabbi Meir had went back on his halacha. He didn't stay with his machlokas. He eventually moved over to their sheep. If there's the size of a cell of the skin, it's kosher. Heicha. Where does this have to be? Anywhere? It has to be along the spine. That means a long rectangular piece that if you add it all up, it's a sella. Maybe it has to be the width of a sella along the whole spine. The portion of the there has to be enough skin, the size of a sella, along the whole spinal column. There also has to be skin covering all the joints. There also has to be skin by the umbilicus. What if there's skin everywhere on the body except on the spine? Or the skin around the umbilicus is missing, but everything else is there. The skin around the joints are all missing, but everything else is there. Teiku. Amarab. Kolo or kulo matzil begluda. Any skin, as long as it's a sella, will say that the animal is kosher. Chutz ma'or beis process, except by the hoofs. Rabbi Yochanan afilu or beis process nami matzil. He says the skin there will also save the animal. Boy min ravasim Rabbi Yochanan or beis process mashi yatzil begluda. The hide by the hoofs, will it save this flayed animal? Amalei matzil, yes. Amalei limadetana Rabbeinu teach us. Elu sh'orusen kivsaro. The following's hide is like their flesh. One of them is orbis aprosis. So it's not really skin. How can Rabbi Yochanan say that that skin helps save the animal? Amalei al takniteni. Don't ask me a kasha from there. Because that opinion is not the view of most people. It's just in Das Yochid, the Tanya. Hashoichet is ha'oila. Yishech den oila, lahaktir kezayis, and you have intent to burn a kazayisme or shaltach sa'alya, the skin under the tail. Chutzlim komo, if you have in mind in Tel Aviv, posel ve'makores. If you have in mind tomorrow, chutzlizmanu pigol v'chanalim kores. So this Tana holds that the hide under the tail is flesh, not skin, because by an ola, only the flesh is offered, not the skin. By an ola, the hide is given to the Kohanim. Eliezer ben Yehuda ish iblim amim mishum Yaakov v'chen hayeh Reb Shimon ben Yehuda ish ikus oimer mishum Reb Shimon echad or beisaproses, whether it's the hide by the hoofs, vechad or harosh shel egel hayorech, or whether it's the skin over the calf of the head, vechad or shaltach salya, or the skin of the tail. Any other hide that the Chachamim included that said that their hide is like the meat, to include lavi or base of boises, the skin around the genitalia. Chutzlim komo posveim b'kores. Chutzlim manu piko v'chalom kores. So it's a das yachid that holds the skin is flesh. So, but Rav Yochanan holds that skin is not flesh, and therefore any skin will save the animal from being a treifa if it's the amount of a cell. Very good.
Tomorrow, same time.